Wonderful. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm sure we'll have a few more folks join us. This is an event hosted by Catalyst Miami, where we're asking the basic question: what happened in Tallahassee? I think this year more than any other, I have a huge question mark as to what happened last legislative session, what is happening with coronavirus, what is happening with our unemployment, and what are we going to do going forward? I think it's probably the most question marks I feel like I've definitely ever had. I'm sure many across the state feel the same way. Every year, Catalyst Miami goes to Tallahassee on our advocacy days, which are called Catalyst to the Capitol. And so this is a long-awaited debrief that we've promised the participants that went with us. And so let's talk affordable housing. So it is no question to the folks watching this and to the advocates here that we have a major affordable housing crisis in Florida. Before COVID, pre-COVID, this massive crisis that has only been exacerbated right now due to mass unemployment, a system that doesn't support safety nets in this state so that when folks are getting paycheck to paycheck, you're already at such risk of losing your home. And of course, with COVID, we've seen that across the state. And so when we look at our priorities, though, this session, collectively, we were actually quite successful this legislative session. We were successful in keeping bad things from happening and actually passing some proactive legislation that centers the needs of renters, of manufactured homeowners, of some of our most, vulnerable communities, and folks that, of course, we agree housing is a fundamental right.
So in Tallahassee, the interesting thing about there is anything can happen, but you have to be realistic about what your expectations are and where things fit. So let's just take, for example, criminal justice reform. There are a whole host of ideas that are coming out as a result of the Black Lives Matter movement, and we've basically put them into three categories. And those categories are things that are easy, like they're low-hanging fruit. Republicans won't have a problem with it. We can get law enforcement buy-in. We have things on the other end of the spectrum, things that are hard, almost impossible. Republicans are probably not going to give them a hearing, and it's probably going to die, but they're statement bills and they're messaging bills, and they're still important to be filed. And then there's the third category, which is these bills that are not a clear yes and not a clear no. They're going to take working on them to get them through, but they are attainable, right? But they're going to take some heavy lifting. So as you're advocating, you have to know kind of who you're dealing with and where whatever you're trying to advocate for falls on their priorities. Now, all of that being said, if there's something you're really passionate about, even if it's a deemed, not going to move bill, that doesn't mean you can't fight for it. Things happen all the time that people did not think were going to move, but yet they happen.
We've been fighting for years under the Affordable Care Act to expand the eligibility of who can access Medicaid in Florida. And those bills did not pass this session. We continue to fight. We know that Medicaid access is a popular issue among Floridians. This is something where the legislature continues to put partisanship over people. They continue to essentially be what it feels like sometimes 10 to 20 years behind where Florida are. We're continuing to dismantle that and demonstrate to elected officials that there's consequences, right? And I appreciate this question around how do these lawmakers continue to get reelected when they support wholly cruel and unpopular legislation. Understanding this free space, but I will, note that there does need to be, regardless of your party, any of that, we need to demonstrate that when you support the West, when you support immigrants, when you support criminal justice reform, you win, right?
Sometimes it's just the argument and the way that you make it, and being insistent on not bending and showing that you're reasonable but inflexible when it comes to doing the right thing.
Again, you could argue, if you're optimistic, it's a good signs, but of course we're long overdue for climate action. And so many of our bills also sit on the intersections of climate, right? So Senator Pizzo's bill around an automatic moratorium on evictions during hurricanes. I mean, that is lined up exactly with climate action as well, and frontline communities. The bill here around defending outdoor workers from extreme heat, right? This is a workers' rights issue. It's an immigrant rights issue. It's a repro issue, because we know pregnant workers in particular who work outside face extreme disparities in this in their births, right? And then we also, of course, it's directly a climate issue. And so much of climate justice sits on so many intersections of our work. The bill that did pass, Senator Rodriguez, JJR, as we lovingly know him in Miami-Dade, as well as Republican Representative Vanessa Lupus, they championed and passed the first ever climate bill to pass the Florida legislature, a bill that essentially requires that any future infrastructure that takes the invulnerable areas to sea level rise that uses public funds has to go through certain requirements and an analysis to make sure that it's going to be safe to build there, right? And so this is really the first ever kind of climate resiliency bill ever passed in the legislature. It was done so in the bipartisan fashion. I do want to note some other victories in the sense of workers and living wages, things of that nature. And so we also did file a bill that would essentially repeal the earned sick time and minimum wage preemption from statute to allow local governments to decide if they want to implement a local earned sick time ordinance. That bill did not pass. We're going to continue to fight for local control when it can help address equity.
That it's bittersweet because it comes and it's born out of tragedy that they become relevant. And what do I mean by that? There's been some mention. Last year, I filed a bill that during a state of emergency, you can't be evicted. Well, look where we are. Last year, I filed a bill to require implicit bias training for law enforcement officers. And I got a bunch of sort of tone deaf looks of, is it really necessary? Well, look where we are. So listen, it's not to call out, people on the other side of the aisle that what'd you do on May 24th, the day before George Floyd was killed, and did you care then? But it is about, listen, this is why we say these things. And I think I'm looking forward to next session. I think it's going to be lean. There's not going to be a lot of money around. It is going to be policy and argument, based, which I like. I like trial. I like, argument. I like, getting into that. And it's really we're all going to get a bit naked about our feelings and about our situations, because this disaster has been fairly ecumenical. I have an equal number of angry, upset, suffering, nearly homeless, food security, housing insecurity, car loan missing payment, no money for medicine Republicans as I do Democrats. And for a lot of them who have basically looked at the poor or those who need help and need an uplifting, they're going to quickly learn the difference between equality and equity. Okay. They're going to get a quick, sharp learning curve education. And those things that I think people were really arguing and screaming about, or to the far left or to the far right, I think we're going to get a lot done. And I think we can redefine what the center is. I think we can really redefine that now we have what were middle class, comfortable families in January are now suffering and desperate. And I just hope people don't have short-term memories when it comes to affecting that type of change. Okay, reach out to us. We can get things done, but we need help, we need ideas, we need support, and we're only as strong and as influential as how much enthusiasm, support, and advocacy that we get from great organizations like Catalyst.